So it's really important to make your communication reusable. So basically, try to find ways where you can have archives of your communication, where it's easily to search for people, like to find stuff, and make those things public. So with that, this leads into the next part, which is, for us, it's we need to make it easy for our community to help us. It's kind of like a no-brainer in a lot of ways, but the easier you make it, obviously, the lower you have your barrier for people to participate. So we do a lot of these things. So we have something like Sumo, which is support.mozilla.org, which is our support site, where we don't provide support. We have, Mozilla has, I think, at the moment, 3 people who do support. And you can imagine we are not actually doing support, but we are growing and fostering a community around this. So if you want to do support for Firefox, for example, if you're knowledgeable in the product, it's really easy to get into this community, get an account, help people out. There is different, we have some game mechanics built in, so the more questions you answer, the more points you get, the higher you climb on the social ladder. As well as we do fun stuff like, we recently launched a project which we call the Army of Awesome. So we allow people to basically use the Firefox Twitter account to send tweets back to people to help them out. So someone tweets like, oh, my Firefox crashes. And then we allow our community to use our official Twitter account to basically send tweets back. And the person in a given time frame, I think it's a week, who sent back the most tweets, we send like a surprise t-shirt, which is signed by our chairwoman and stuff like that. We do the same for marketing, as well as quality assurance. So we create these kind of sub-communities and hubs for these people to get together and give them tools. A really powerful example of this is localization. So Firefox today ships in 80 languages. We only produce a single one. So the core team of us only produces the US English version. We have communities basically who want to see Firefox in their native language. So you have a really nice example for me is the Catalan community, which is so Catalan is a sub-language in the Spanish region. It's spoken in the Barcelona area. It's not a lot of people. It's like 10 million people who actually speak Catalan, or 5 million people even. But they wanted to have a Catalan version of Firefox. So we make it really easy for them to basically come together and translate the product. And now we have a Catalan version of it, which also speaks to the product. So it gives the people like this feeling of, this is my product, it's made for me, it's made by a community. So there's this whole we often compare it a little bit to the whole food movement. So it's a bit like organic food, basically. Like where it's coming from, and it has a local quality to it. Increasingly for us, the focus becomes to make these tools even easier. So we find this with the localization. Localization is a really hard topic, actually, because you've got issues with like grammar, for example. So you can't not only translate strings, but often grammar changes, sentence structures changes, or even if you go into non-Roman characters, so you do have Chinese languages or something, which are written in a completely different way. So we create new tools for these communities to build. So our focus is increasingly, with the 350 people we have, or the people who work on these pieces at least, is enable people to do stuff, or be the catalyst for it. This is my preferred insight. Surprise is overrated. So one of the key takeaways for us was, surprise is literally the opposite of engagement. You're only surprised by something your community does if you're not engaged with them, if you don't know what's going on. If you increase the inner circle of participation, if you let more people in, if you give more people an insight into what you are about, then you are not surprised by stuff they do. And the biggest example for this is, when we launched Firefox 3 a couple of years ago, a couple of kids in the UK actually created a crop circle. And it's surprising, like for some it is surprising. I mean, we had like tons of press and they were like, oh my God, like these people from, these fans do these things. We actually knew about it because these kids basically got in touch with us and asked us for a cat drawing of the Firefox logo, so they could cut out the crop field. And we asked them, so what do you want to do this for? And they were like, yeah, we can't tell you, it's secret. But they let us in and into the secret, and it was a huge success. So make sure that you include people, that people feel included, that people are part of your community, of your inner circle. What I found most is my background is commercial, so I worked at companies. And you have got this thing where it's this is the company and the community is this thing outside. It doesn't work. You need to have them inside. You need to have them, be part of yourself. Which leads us to my sixth insight. And this is one I feel particularly strong about, especially as I worked at eBay when we were 50 people in Germany, and I left them when we were 2,000. So I had tremendous growth. And it was really interesting for me to see when I joined eBay, my team, we really wanted to change the world. We really saw how allowing people to trade online literally changes their world. And when I left, when we had 2,000 people, and no offense, but it literally became how much more money can we milk out of these people? So it literally changed. And for me, eBay lost its mojo at that point. So it's really important to understand, treat the people you work with, the community you work with, as citizens. And citizens have a couple of really interesting criteria. So citizens are not consumers. They are much more than consumers. They're not even bystanders. They're even more than stakeholders in a commercial setting. They're literally us. If you see your community as citizens, then they become you. And your community is on level footing with you. The interesting thing about citizens is that they actually start to challenge your status quo, and they help you improve yourself. And this is what we see at Mozilla every single day. The people we work with, the community we work with, because we empower them and because we treat them as equals, they make our conversation rich. They basically come to us and give us really valuable advice, which has its problem, and we come to that later, but it's empowering. It's immensely empowering. So they help us not only make our products better, it's also important that they make us better. Us as an organization, they help us define who we are. So there's a meta insight in this, which is basically, and I mentioned this earlier when I said that this comes with a big warning sticker. It really is about the art of figuring out how and where to apply these things. There is no schema which you can apply. So in summary, the 7 lessons are: build awesome products, because without an awesome product, you have nothing. Push your decision making to the edges. Allow communication to happen. Make it easy to do the important things, especially for your community. See surprise is overrated. Have people engaged. And lastly, treat your communities as citizens. And with that, really try things out. A lot of the things we do is we try. In a lot of cases, we simply don't know, and we run little experiments, and we just throw stuff on the wall and see what happens. As we treat our community properly, I hope, we actually get a lot of feedback. So basically, in my group, especially because we are more on the experimental side, we just throw stuff out. And 5 minutes later, someone is on Twitter, on email, on newsgroup, and basically saying, hey, this is a good idea, and this is not so good, and so on and so on. It is a really interesting, very, very fast cycle. And then increasingly what we try to do is we measure where it's possible, which is sometimes hard, because a lot of the stuff simply doesn't have a precedent, and there's no easy way for us to push this into an Excel spreadsheet or something, but we try. So having said that, and I kind of touched this earlier, there are some problems. So the first problem I need to mention is the moment you have an engaged citizens, they become noisy. So one of the things you have is, first of all, you've got tons of them, right? So the big question is every single time you go out to your community and say hey, what do you think about feature X? You get hundreds of opinions, and then the proverbial, like the best opinion you always get is the proverbial, oh, my mother said, or, you know, my mother can't use that, which is fine. You just need to like tune in, and you need to create a sense of like, what is the actually important bits out of this? And you can do this by, there's a couple of mechanisms. I mean, you can just simply apply statistics against it and say, well, you know, like the loudest stuff is probably the most important stuff. You can apply social currency against it. So you can basically say, well, if this person says this, we should better listen because this person really knows what he's talking about. So there's a couple of ways around it, but it's definitely something which happens. The other thing is, the moment you empower your community is literally demanding. So this young man there posted a 1-hour video telling the world why Mozilla and Firefox is screwed. And it's painful to watch. You know, like, I work there, I watch this, and I'm like, holy crap. But on the other hand, like, 50% of what he says is actually correct. Like, there's a lot of like ranting in there and like stuff I would dismiss, but there is a lot of good stuff in there. So you have to deal with it. Doing this in the open is especially painful, right? So this stuff is on YouTube, so everybody can see it. And like this gentleman here is a very well-known and respected person. So obviously, like the whole blogosphere and like the tech press like jumped on it. So, you know, it comes with a cost, but at the same time, it makes you better. And often the community is also contradictory. So the last time I looked on Google and I looked for Mozilla should, we had 16 million hits, right? So there's a lot of stuff in there. And it's often like, what's interesting is like you often get like totally contradictory opinions. Like someone says like, oh, you totally should do this. And then the other one says like, oh, you totally shouldn't do this. So again, it's a really interesting problem to figure out, you know, whom to listen to and how to get out of there. It's important to note at this point that we do not believe in design by committee. So the idea that you can have a democratized design process, we very strongly believe is a failure, especially if you're doing consumer software. It just doesn't work because you become this like washed down product. It's a little bit like when you look at pretty much any Apple product, when you look at a product like an iPod, for example, it has a lot of features it doesn't have. It can't record, it can't, you know, do this, and it can't do that. They're very conscious design trade-offs. And we do the same. So we are not a democracy, we are a meritocracy. So we are a community built on merit. So we listen to the people who've got like the highest status. High status comes from being the best in your field. And then basically design our product according to those principles. So your community, a noisy community, is vital at the end of the day. As painful as it might be, and as, you know, as hard it is to work with, at the same time, they help us. They help us tremendously build our product. So, yeah, there's a cost to it, but it's well worth it. The second issue, and this is something we face every single day, and especially my group faces every single day. At the scale we're operating in and the field we're operating in, there are no maps. There is no precedent. There is no, oh, let's see how X, Y, and Z did that, and we can just copy it. There is no, oh, I call my friends at Harvard Business School and see if they've got a case about something. It just doesn't work. And actually, even if there are maps, they're everybody else's maps but ours. They don't work for us because we are so unique. And I believe a lot of the companies, even if you think you are very similar to, company X or organization X, you are not. So just because I like this thing so much. When you look at maps, there's like this is really old maps and it has dragons everywhere. So be careful when you look at maps. Like they often can guide you, but they are not yours. So really for us, it's like the key is defining what you care about, define how you can measure it, and then define what the litmus test is. And litmus test is something we do a lot. So even if we can't like fully measure something, when we run like any kind of experiment, when we do anything, we basically always define, so what is the expected outcome roughly, and what is the non-outcome, and then basically look at like how do these two stack up. And with that, I want to just go a little bit like, it's kind of like a slight deviation, but I want to keep you a little bit in the loop of stuff we are interested in at the moment. So stuff which basically keeps me up at night. And the reason why I say this is, even if you're not like deeply involved in like the browser world as we are, you might have seen there's a lot of competition now. Google brought Chrome out, and Internet Explorer is coming out in a new version, which is fantastic. It's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to have a world which has like multiple browsers out there and tons of innovation. At the same time, what I see is, and especially for my group, is the browser becomes less and less a central element of a conscious central element of what you do. It fades into the background. It becomes this thing which you run and you do your work in all day long, but it's not the centerpiece of attention anymore. So we are really interested in like looking at what is beyond this browser. I don't think that Mozilla will have 5-10 years from now the Firefox browser as the main thing. We will do other things which are aligned with our mission, and this is kind of like some of the things we are interested in. So with that, the first like big thought for me is keeping things open. And we had this, so 10 years ago we had this, or not even 10 years ago, we had this with Internet Explorer and the internet. And I see the same thing happening with this wonderful device. So we all have like, smartphones, and a lot of us have iPhones. And as nice as the iPhone is, and as nice as the new world of apps is we have on the phone, it's tightly controlled by a single company. It's tightly controlled by a company which sets the rules of what you can consume on your device and not. There's tons of stories which go around, like there's a Pulitzer Prize winning animated novel which was rejected in the Apple Store because it violated some obscure Apple guideline. The other thing, you can't get adult content on these devices, which, I'm not for adult content, but like it's a totally legal thing in a lot of states at least. So, why not? There's a whole bunch of things which happen on these devices, which I think we need to find a counterbalance against. And more for me, this is the story of this guy versus this guy. And you don't need to know who that is, it's Adam Smith. So the question for me becomes, how can we bring free markets? How can we bring the idea of free markets? How can we bring what is good about the web to these device classes? And the iPhone is only like, for me, like the iPhone or Android in this case, nearly equally as bad, is only like a piece of the puzzle. Like you will see integrated devices in your phone and in, everywhere these days. I mean, I was at Philips in the Netherlands, and they showed me like their whole lineup of like consumer electronics, which are all connected. Every single device has got like a computer, a chip, a touch screen, and runs a proprietary system, which doesn't allow you to do things. You can't hack them, you can't change them, you can't do anything about them. Let's say that's, from our perspective, is not a desirable outcome. So the other topic, and I touched on this earlier a little bit, is the question of evolving with the web and the idea of like the web beyond the browser. So when you look at the web, like this is one of the first screenshots of the Yahoo homepage, 10 years ago. And you look at the web browser, this is NCSA Mosaic, which was the first web browser at the time. And then you look at the web today, I mean, it's this like wonderful garden of like, we call it Web 2.0, and it's like these interactive applications. And then you look at the web browser as it is today, and this is Firefox 3 point something, and you put them next to each other, you see like there is not there has been a lot of innovation in the core, but the product itself hasn't changed that much. I'm very driven by the idea of like, how do we create classes of products which are much more attuned to how we use the web today? So, and then lastly, there's a couple of other themes, and I really just want to gloss over them so you have heard them at least, and I put them into your brains. Another really big topic which drives me is the question of you and your friends. I'm not quite sure if it's a desirable outcome that a single company, namely Facebook, knows everything about you and has like your whole social graph and knows all your friends, and there's basically no alternative for you. I have no problem with Facebook. I've got lots of really good friends at Facebook, and I think they're doing a tremendous job. It's an amazing platform. But what I would like to see is for consumers the ability to take my social graph and own it. Because this is my friends. It's like my address book. It's like giving someone my address book with like all my friends and all their birth dates and all their telephone numbers and basically say, here, you take care of it. That doesn't sound like the future I want to live in. So we're really interested in like ideas around this and kind of like figuring out how can we give the user the control back about these things, you know? And again, I have no problem with Facebook. I just want to get the user back into control.